off Rhythm 105.9 FM.
The number one station in the nation. Rhythm 105.9
All right, everybody. So excited to have Marshall Charloff on our show today. What a talented individual. It's a big treat for you guys. I know I'm excited. How you doing, Marshall?
Hi, Abbie. Well, that was a nice introduction. Thank you.
I mean, all truth, though.
Well, tell the truth to the people.
As they say, preach.
Preach it.
So I'm so excited to learn about you. One of the things I was kind of pondering on the other day, I was like, I wonder if you can remember the very first song that you heard as a kid that struck you in a certain way.
Yeah. Listen to the music. There was a Doobie Brothers tune that came on, and it was my dad's favorite. So we just had a thing for driving down. We're in the car, and that song came on. We just crank it up, and then I would play the drums on his dashboard, and we would just jam it out.
Oh, that's
so that
amazing.
was kind of a bonding thing where you're like, you did with your dad, and music was able to create that. It was just, we were just driving in the car, but then music changed everything. And you're like, subconsciously music's a thing. It can evoke emotions and bond people together, that kind of thing.
Everything. It's amazing. That's so cool that you remember that. Do you have any idea roughly how old you were?
I'm going with 7.
What? That's so cool.
Well, you know what? I mean, we could look this up, but then it's going to really date me. I could actually find out how old I was because the song had just come out. So some of y'all are doing the math right now because that came out a long time ago.
See, one of the first songs I remember hearing with my mom, I think I was around 6. So that's pretty spot on with kind of where your memories are. But it was Lisa Stanfield's Been Around the World. She used to keep that song on repeat, but since she has an accent, it wasn't like been around, it was like been around the world and I die.
I like that version.
It was like the total remix.
I like
but
that.
It's amazing how even just hearing a song, it can totally take you back to a moment in your life. That's so cool. So what are your biggest influences?
Oh, we're talking musically now, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, Prince is going to be number 1 on the list.
Love that.
Just had an enormous impact on me as a musician, certainly as a man, actually, from knowing him at a young age, and just the direction and kind of just the trajectory that he set me on and that I've been on this whole time. So he's definitely number 1. There's a lot of jazz influence in everything that I do, and Prince drew on a lot of his jazz influences, and he disguised his love of jazz and his mastery of jazz, actually. They're in his pop songs. They're all over the place. But they're so brilliantly disguised as pop songs. But those in the know, those that study jazz, you're like, wow, dude, how'd you get away with that? That's classic jazz phrasing right there, and bebop phrasing and voicings, and you're like, wow, you got away with that. People thought it was a pop tune. So a lot of jazz influences, but, again, you just go to Prince and it's all there anyway,
Yeah. Scatting is hard, too. I tried to do that one day, and I was like, what do they call it? Scatting, right? In jazz?
Scatting, yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I tried that. Failed miserably my first time. It's like, is there an instruction manual for this? Because it's more complicated than it seems. It's not quite that easy.
Well, it's a language, right?
It really is.
Music's a language, and scatting certainly is your spirit man on the inside, or woman that has something to say. And I don't really think there is a fail necessarily on scatting. It's just that's what you wanted to say. Whatever came out of your mouth
is what works.
But I guess that's the trick. If what came out of your mouth is what you wanted to say, and if what came out of your mouth is what you wanted to say, then that's right. You nailed it.
Hashtag nailed it.
Hashtag nailed it. That's it. But it's just like any other language, right? I mean, am I communicating well with you right now? I don't know. The answer is, if what I wanted to convey came out, then I nailed it. regardless of, how it's received. If that's what I wanted to say,
I never thought about it like that.
I nailed it. And that's the same thing with music.
That's an awesome way to look at that. I'm never going to look at that the same way now, just because of you.
Okay.
It's going to remind me of you all the time. Every time now I hear people scatting, I'm going to be like, Marshall.
There's no wrong scatting.
Right. There's an answer to everything, as they say. So You're super talented. I mean, really, I should just say you're super multifaceted too. There's so much that you're able to do. Do you remember how old you were when you wrote your first song?
Well, shortly after I learned how to play, I'm self-taught. So that was kind of the first thing. I learned guitar later than most kids, because they had music in high school. They had Jazz Lab, it was called, and I hadn't picked up an instrument. But I went to a talent. They have those assemblies in the gym, and I watched this. My kids I went to school with that were in my class that they're playing REO Speedwagon, and I watched all the girls scream around and go, "Oh my God, he's amazing!" And I just went, "Okay, I'm doing that." And the next day, I was like, I got a hold of a guitar, and I signed up for Jazz Lab in high school. And I was older, like I was, 15 maybe. So I was like maybe 15 when I started music for the first time when I picked up a guitar. So it was kind of late because everybody else had already, grown up from kindergarten, got their instrument first grade, and they were assembled, throughout the years together in this. When I got to this class, these kids had already played together forever. And I just decided, well, I'm going to start playing now. So I was probably, not long after that, maybe another 6 months later, I started trying to write stuff.
Wow, that's pretty quickly. That's pretty impressive.
Well, it was either that or learn other people's songs. I'm like, well, if I'm going to put energy and time into learning how to play something, I'll just write my own thing versus write somebody else's thing.
Right.
Or versus copy somebody else's thing.
Yeah, because I don't think that there's like a set age on music. I really feel like it's just a gift, and when you feel it, and it's just another way of expressing yourself. I know me personally, I can't play like fluently. I wish I would have stuck to it, but I started with the violin, and then I got into piano, which is still my favorite instrument. I'm actually getting back into that. I'm so excited. And I tried the guitar. That was hard. It's a completely different language.
Well, I mean, I think it's a different layout. Like for those people that are linear minded, where things have to kind of be in order and I have to see the roadmap. The piano is really, laid out for that because it's all right there. I mean, you can see it. All 12 notes are right there, and then they just all repeat. Whereas on the guitar, because it's in fourths, so nothing really makes sense. It's a roadmap that's kind of convoluted.
That's a good way to look at it. That makes a lot of sense because that would explain why I prefer the piano to other instruments. Look at that! I'm learning so much new stuff today.
The other thing, like transposing, right? That's where guitar gets the upper hand. So transposing, if you're playing bar chords or a progression or even a riff, or you're playing in boxes, like patterns and things like that, and the band says, all right, let's take it up a whole step. You just simply move your hand up a whole step. Like, it's just the easiest thing in the world. Whereas on piano, you're going, no, I know all those shapes in that other key. And now everything's different. All the fingering's different. Everything's different on the piano. So they both have their challenges.
It's like they have their challenges, but then they mesh so well together. Just like anything, obviously, like when you hear a symphony or an orchestra playing, it's just adding a bunch of colors to a painting, I guess is the best way to describe it.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
100%. I agree with that.
Yeah, look, I'm kind of smart sometimes. Not all the time, but every now and then. I have a little light bulb moment.
You don't have to convince me.
Right?
I knew that.
I remind myself of that.
105.9
Back with
FM.
Marshall. So what was a cool talent that you had as a kid that maybe most people may not know, other than just, really doing your thing with the instruments?
I was a sports guy. I was just really good at sports. I was little. I'm a smaller statured gentleman.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things where I didn't know. I didn't know I was too small to go play football, so I did. And I just excelled at sports. And that was kind of the first exposure to adulation. So people would clap. I scored a touchdown. There's an audience that claps for you. It's like, oh, that feels good. And so carrying that over in what I do now, what I used to do pre-COVID, where you're playing for live audiences and they're applauding and clapping and basically giving you their approval. And I think there was some parallels from being a kind of a child athlete and excelling, as a kid, and getting, approval. That's the common theme, I think.
I feel like that's the greatest reward any creative person can have, even an athletic person, is to hear that from a crowd, because it just makes everything just mean so much more and really special in that moment. It's kind of hard to describe if you haven't actually experienced it, because it's really not a feeling you can properly express.
No doubt. I don't think, there's just nothing parallel to that. It's true. It's like everything's okay in the world for that moment.
Well, then I feel like after you get through like your first introduction, your song, and however you introduce yourself, I feel like it's just all smooth sailing after that. Like the butterflies go away. It's almost like you're in a whole other world. That's how I always viewed it. It's like you just kind of get lost in this other universe. It's just hard to explain. It's just really hard to explain.
Well, I think you know the difference. I think the good ones go there with what you're describing. And that's your job. Your job is to go there because the audience doesn't, in their daily lives, whatever they're doing, when they show up to their jobs, they don't have that 100% comfort level within their skin and 100% dominant, just sense of authority in their job. And a performer has to have that. And the audience sees the performer and goes, I want that.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I want to be a musician, but I just want to feel that comfortable in whatever the heck I do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. But that's a rarity. Like there's some people that aren't even fazed by it, but it takes a special person to be able to really own moments like that. Because there's nothing that can really prepare you for it. Because the way that you think you're going to be in front of an audience and the way that you end up being sometimes can be so opposite of what you envisioned.
True. In my tribute work, which is very different than my original work, but in my tribute work, I kind of got a lifeline because I can escape not only within myself, but within the character. So when I'm doing the Prince tribute, I can basically channel his energy and his dominance and his authority and his badassery, if that's a word. But
it is now.
They call him the royal badness. So to try and channel that, and you it's not really an ego check anymore because, well, it's not me. I don't think I'm the greatest musician in the world, but I think he is, and I'm channeling him. So I'm going to, in everything that I do here, display that kind of that attitude of just supreme musicianship and authority.
Well, which is kind of required when you're trying to channel someone like him, because he was so unique. He just kind of had his own lane that you couldn't compare him to somebody else. Say, oh, Prince was like, He just wasn't. He was just Prince. Like that's it's the only way you could describe him in any room. It's Prince, man. It's greatness.
Yeah, you get it or you don't.
Yeah, that's it. Bottom line.
Yeah.
So do you have a particular instrument that's a favorite for you, like one over the other? Or is it more just kind of like a feeling that you're looking for?
Lately, it's piano. I've been studying piano. And, just like you, it's just, you're the whole orchestra when you play the piano. Literally. I mean, you're the string section if you want to be. You're the bass for sure. You're the mid. You're everything. And you can really explore harmonization and the reharmonization. And it's all just, you don't need anybody. You don't need anybody. It's a percussive instrument too. So you're the drummer. You're just all things. And that's pretty powerful.
You're kind of like the heartbeat and the lifeline all at once.
Everything. Yeah. I don't need nobody else. Just me and my piano.
Yep, that's it.
That's all I need.
That should be a song right there. Just me and my piano.
Let's do it.
Right?
Let's do it.
I'll take you up on that. That'd be an amazing jingle. Oh, you should pitch that to Yamaha. Be like, hey, guys, I got one for you. Hey, that would have been funny. Yeah, that would be so cool. Piano. I haven't heard a new jingle from them in a long time.
Yeah. I wonder how, manufacturers of musical instruments, I was just thinking the other day, just with the shutdown and the music industry kind of being on hold, how it affects down the food chain, just all the different folks involved. And, I think the music stores, I don't even think they're open, like Guitar Centers and whatnot. But I'm sure online.
With no product.
Sure. What's that?
Sparingly. They're open, like, very sparingly, and they barely have any product, yeah. I had to actually go to one not too long ago, like maybe 2 weeks ago, and they've got nothing. Like, you're better off just buying something online. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're not really replenishing very much. Sad. It's so sad. I used to love going in there.
So that means that people are buying instruments even though they have nowhere to play them but their homes. Well, that's good.
Well, it's like being dedicated to your first love. It's like, can you ever really quit? It's like you can't. It's inside you. Like, imagine that you going a whole month not playing any instruments. It'd be weird.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
You're like, oh, yeah. After you think about it like that, it's like,
I have no idea what that would be like.
Yeah. See, exactly.
I can imagine that would be weird. Yes.
It's like it doesn't matter what's going on in the world. When you're a musician or you're a creative individual, it's almost like you can restructure your idea, your vision of the world, because you can just kind of get lost in whatever it is that you're doing. And like you said, I mean, music, it's supposed to make you feel something. So when you're doing it right, that's all you need, really. And it could just be one instrument. That's it. And it can be the greatest thing ever. How's that go? Just a piano in your voice?
A piano in my voice. Oh, yeah. Pianoinmyvoice.com.
Yeah, you see what I did there? But
I like that. You should be on the radio.
Man, that's a good idea. I'll take you up on that.
Cool.
So, at what point in your life did you decide to transition from being a musician to an artist? I know they kind of go hand in hand, because you were talking about how earlier you kind of started off doing both, because you started learning one and transitioned into the other. Essentially, you kind of need one to do the other. But has there ever been a point where you said, okay, you know what? I think it's time for me to be my own artist rather than just a musician.
Wow. That's profound, actually. I don't know why that's resonating with me, but there's a distinction between being a musician and being an artist. And honestly, that only just occurred to me when you said it. I've never processed it that way, because I thought, well, I'm a musician. That is being an artist. I am creating. But could you elaborate on what you think the distinction is between an artist and a musician?
Well, when you're the artist, I feel like you're kind of leading the way with everything. So you kind of set the tone for things. Whereas a musician, you're becoming part of the colors that are in the picture. So I guess the best way to say it is it's kind of like the painter versus the colors on the portrait.
Wow. Okay.
That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah.
My brain's complicated. Sorry.
It is. No, I mean, I've been in this game for a long time, and I've never really processed a distinction between that. So I'm glad you're forcing that on me. I guess, I was a sideman, and I guess a sideman is a musician, not the artist. He has a role in the ensemble, but he didn't write the music. He's not singing it. He's not selling it, which is part of, being an artist is you have to sell it. There's an image behind it on all these things. So when I was a sideman in a bunch of bands, that was my role. I was a musician. Yeah, I get it now. Wow. And then as a frontman and as a composer and as the brand, it's the brand is all encompassing. That's my artistry. Certainly as a composer. Okay, so now what was the original question?
Was there a particular point in your life when you decided to transition? Well, I guess not. There must not have been, because it's all kind of, it seems like it's all just kind of turned into one and the same in a way.
Well, they've kind of both been happening always at the same time. Like, it's just as long as it's music. I've been a contributor to so many other people's project where I help them realize their vision. As a producer, certainly that's your job is to help the artist realize their vision and to, just make it happen and realize. And I guess I repeat myself, but yeah, just to make it happen. But then as an original artist and as a composer, then you're realizing your own vision. And, it goes back to that canvas that you're talking about, when, artists, when we're talking about painters, typically there's not a whole lot of collaboration. Right. In fact, I don't know if there's ever, that's a great question. Has there ever been like, all right, I got the skyline, let me call in Bill because he's really good at landscapes.
Never.
It's never. It's one guy who sits down there with his palette and canvas and goes. And that's how I'm used to when it's my song. 90% of the time, there's no collaborators. Because I play every instrument, I produce it myself. And what you get as a listener is you get that artistry 100%. Because it was just his vision from beginning to end. He didn't... Just like we said, it'd be ridiculous to think that painting was done by. Can you imagine seeing a painting and then where they put the signatures at the bottom? There's like 8 of them. You're like, what?
It'd be a little complicated. Yeah.
It'd be complicated, but I kind of see it like that. Like I'm the artist, it's my vision, and the people want to hear what this is what I brought.
Absolutely, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Look at that, as they say, in a perfect world. There's always order and chaos. So it's almost like whatever makes sense. Is that another
Prince reference?
It is now.
Yeah, that's what his album, Chaos and Disorder.
I didn't plan on it, but I should have just owned it and been like, yeah, of course.
Nice job.
Should have just owned that before we went on break.
You're really not, though. You're really nailing all of them.
Am I? I'm the world's worst comedian. If there was an award for the worst comedian ever, I would be number 1 in line. I can promise you that. My punchlines are so weak. They're so bad. You know what's bad when you're in a room full of people and the only person that laughs is you. You're like, yep, that's...
Well, the only,
like
the only thing worse is that if you thought you were funny, but you're not. That's worse. Like knowing you're not funny, but you still, you're just going to have a good time anyway. Anybody can roll with that. It's the person that thinks they're funny.
Yeah, and then you just kind of look at them and you're like, yeah, okay, anyway. It's just one of those things.
Right.
So we were talking a little bit earlier. You kind of touched on what you're doing with the whole purple experience. I know a lot of people are saying that you're able to kind of recreate Prince's magic in a really special way which for so many people that were fans of his, it's amazing to be able to still have that, because it feels like it's the closest thing that you get to an icon or someone you idolized who you may not have gotten to experience in concert. But you were also handpicked by Dr. Fink, which is insane. So I guess I'm trying to understand, like, you're the lead in Purple Experience, which, no pressure. What has that been like for you?
They're very big heels to fill. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
What's it been like for me? It's been an honor. It's been really an honor of a lifetime. It's, you know, sure, it has its challenges, but it's really been an exploration. There's been a lot of growth. It's been 9 years, almost 10 years since we started the show. And, you know, it's become more purposeful, of course, since April 21st, 2016. That's when, okay, this has taken on new meaning. I felt like quitting the show. There's all kinds of things we could talk about, but there was some revelation. There was some discovery where it felt like I'm supposed to keep doing the show. And, you know, there was a lot of healing that had to happen for myself and definitely for audiences. And you started seeing families coming to the show, and they never used to come to the show. You never saw kids at the show. And now you always see kids, tons of kids at the show. And what it was is the parents feeling like that generation and their child is missing out, because who do they have? You know, not to knock anybody out who's out today, but they don't have Prince. They don't have icons like that. So there was this pull of, my kid has to see what Prince was about. Just what was he about? Not that I'm Prince, but just here's a glimpse of what he was about. Here's his music, and here's his showmanship. And so then it felt like, okay, I have a calling. Like, it means more now, because when we started the show, it was with Prince's knowledge, and like you say, with Dr. Fink, you know, founding it with me and playing keyboards with me, and Prince was still very much creating music and touring, and so the void wasn't there. A little bit of the void, because Prince wasn't really going back. You know, that purple coat was never going on him ever again. So some of the iconic looks and a lot of the songs he just stopped doing. And so we brought kind of that throwbacky, remember, this was the look for Little Red Corvette or whatever, and all that kind of thing. And similar energy to way back when. You know, his energy changed a little bit as he you know, aged, and he had nothing to prove, nothing to anyone on earth. And that became more evident when you went and saw him. Whereas earlier, he was jumping off of speakers and splits and doing all kinds of things, making his mark. And so we were a little closer to, you know, when he was on the way up than when he was already dominating the world. Right.
Which there's a vast difference, too.
That was a long answer.
Right, yeah. No, but it's a great answer, though. How did you guys meet?
Me and Matt, Dr. Fink?
No, you and Prince.
Me and Prince. I was in a band with Prince's first cousin in Minneapolis, and I didn't know. I didn't know that he was Prince's cousin, but I had heard a rumor. You know, one of the bandmates said, "Hey, our drummer, you know, it's Prince's first cousin." And I just didn't believe him. I'm like, "Yeah, right. No way." Man, you know, everybody says they're related to Prince because it's Minneapolis and it was 1984. And everybody said, really Prince. So he cornered me at the end of a rehearsal, and he's like, "I hear you're talking some smack about me, and you don't think I'm Prince's cousin." And I'm like, "Well, I don't know, man. I mean, everybody says they are." And he's like, "Well, let's go hang out with him. I guess that's the only way to prove it." I'm like, oh, we're just gonna go hang out with the biggest rock star on earth.
Right.
Because Purple Rain had just come out.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, let's go hang out. He's rehearsing. I'm like, and I'm thinking, I'm a kid. I got nothing better to do. I don't care. Let's go hang out. Sure. Let's go for a ride. I had, zero expectation that actually we were going to meet Prince. But actually we met Prince, rolled up on my motorcycle, similar to the one he had, and got off the motorcycle, and Frank's is my friend. To this day, my friend. Mm-hmm. And Prince's cousin. And we go up, and this would take us too long to give you the whole story, but just the quick story is I met him there. He invited me into his rehearsal, and that's the first time I met Matt and all of the Revolution. And it was a closed rehearsal, so it was me and Frank and the Revolution and a couple recording engineers in a warehouse in Minneapolis. And that was the first of many encounters.
Oh my God. I can't even imagine sitting in this. It's like having solo front row seats to a private concert with him. They say that his genius when it came to music was unlike any other. They said you just had to be around him just to listen to him talk. They were like, man, listen, there's no money you could pay to get that sort of experience, because it's uncanny. It's Prince. Like, all anyone ever said was, it's Prince. Like, there was never like a great description of, oh, well, he's this and that and that. It was just like, man, that's Prince.
No, he's not fully of this earth. I mean, he just wasn't fully here. He was just a little higher plane than everybody else. Certainly musically, there's no question he was. The very first thing that he ever said to me, which like you're describing, like it's just not. This is not a normal conversation. So, I mean, it started off normally. He shook my hand like a normal man would shake my hand, and he knew my name already. So that blew me away, because Frank had told him we were coming, and so he knew my name, and he said, "Hey, Marshall, I have a question to ask you." And there was a couple beautiful women accompanying him. We were outside the warehouse, just on the grass, like having a picnic. And they were these French gals. And so he knew he kind of had an audience. So when he was asking me these questions, it was really about, they were earshot. So I knew that, but he said, yeah, I have a question for you. Do you lie? And do I lie? Yeah, do you lie? And I was a young
That's
kid.
not awkward.
That's not awkward at all. And how do you answer that question? So I said, well, Prince, I try and be a good person, and I try not to lie, and that's important to me. And he said, that's good. You should never lie. And the girls are giggling behind him. And and then we talked for quite a while, but that was the first thing that he said. And then I found out, it didn't make any sense to me. And then a couple of years later, he came out with Under the Cherry Moon, and there's a song on the album called Do You Lie? Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I bet you, and there's French girls were on it. They're on there. So I was like, I bet you he was recording that song like when I arrived or something.
Yeah, something must have been going on. That's so
something
cool,
like
though.
That. Yeah.
Yeah, so I know you recorded with him on the 94 album East. I think you played the keys and the bass, and he sang. Obviously, you worked together there, but have you and him ever collaborated on any music?
No, and I have to actually correct you on the first part of that. It's misleading to say that we worked together on the 94 East recordings. So the 94 East recordings were the first entry into the studio by Prince. Very first thing he ever did. We're talking a 17-year-old, 16, 17-year-old Prince. Way before my time. I was, in diapers. That he went into the studio with Pepe Willie. Pepe Willie was the founder of 94 East, which was a which was a band out of Minneapolis signed to Casablanca. And Prince was related to Pepe through Pepe's wife, and Prince were cousins, which is also Frank's cousin. It's all tied together. You'll find out later. But so Frank, after meeting Prince, he said, let's go hang out with my Uncle Pepe. And I'm like, dude, anybody you want to introduce me to right now, I'm good. You take me. I believe you now. So he introduced me to Pepe, and Pepe was the first to discover Prince, the first to record Prince, Prince's first manager, and the first promoter of his concert, the very first one, which brought all the label executives there, which was Pepe Willie. In every single book you're ever going to read about Prince, Pepe Willie was the first to bring him in the studio and get him launched. And Pepe Willie, and I met him right after meeting Prince. Pepe immediately signed me to his label. So I was like the same age as Prince, but many years later. And so Pepe had all these recordings of Prince and all the songs that belonged to Pepe that Prince played on. So Pepe would play me these songs and he'd give me these tapes. It was back tapes, a long time ago. And he'd say, okay, hey man, Prince is playing guitar on this song, or Prince is playing bass on this, or he's playing keys. Basically, whatever he's not playing, go put a part on it and come back. Like, it was just kind of a way we could work together, and he would challenge me. And so when I would come back to the studio with Pepe, I would contribute my parts. And then later he released these 94 East recordings featuring Prince. There's lots of them, Minneapolis Genius. And if you're a hardcore collector of Prince memorabilia or albums, you have 94 East in your collection. So I am a contributor. I play on these records, but it was not at the same time with Prince. It wasn't even the same, probably wasn't even the same decade. I think Prince did that in late 70, like 79 or something. And I didn't get on there until, I don't know, 85 probably.
Oh, the stories you could tell. Just to be a fly on the wall for some of these sessions, man, I can't even imagine what that would be like taking place, which is, I mean, you feel like that would be kind of like it, like that'd be the it moment that you work so hard for, but you also worked, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but with the Commodores, with the Jonas Brothers, Miley Cyrus, and Switchfoot. I mean, if you had to pick in your career so far, what's been a highlight moment? Do you have one, or is it just a collection of a bunch of them?
Highlight moment.
Other than meeting Prince for the first time.
Yeah, that was huge. I mean, I think I guess the highlight was Red Rocks. We headlined Red Rocks. And 8,000 people in really the most coveted space you can achieve as a musician is Red Rock. Doesn't get any higher than that. Beatles played there, Hendrix played there, U2 filmed their famous is it Sunday Bloody Sunday, where he's got the flag and he's moving it back and forth in front of the crowd. I think Sunday Bloody Sunday, but that was filmed at Red Rocks. I could be wrong about which song it is, but it's definitely one of their big videos was filmed there. But Red Rocks, outside in this amphitheater built by God, and the acoustics are clearly designed by God. And I do my piano segment, and I did 15 minutes by myself on the Red Rock stage and 8,000 people. And, they have the Jumbotrons and everything else, but it was one of those, what am I doing? How did I get here? It just was a powerful moment.
Super impressive.
And I guess the other ones was the symphonies. When I got to front the world's finest symphony orchestras, and to have 60 of the best musicians on the earth behind you, just supporting you, and the power behind that, the energy and synergy. There's no way. That's one of those, wow, once in a lifetime. How do you describe that to somebody? It's just powerful.
It's indescribable. I feel like it's just a moment you really have to live in. You have to be present in it to really understand it.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, there's no other way, I think, to really gather a collective thought that would do it justice or make sense. Because like I said, it's just a feeling, and it all goes back to that, especially with music. It's just a feeling. Speaking of which, though, what is your favorite genre? Do you have one?
Yeah, as a smooth jazzer, we didn't really talk much about that. I'm kind of down, and I'm taking over the smooth jazz world, doing really well in that area. But it really, before it was smooth jazz, and before it was yacht rock, it was 70s pop. It was just top 40. But then now they have stations and they call it yacht rock. And we're talking about Atlanta Rhythm Section, who I played with, and we're talking about Ambrosia, and, Michael McDonald's on 90% of it for some reason, and Christopher Cross, and those folks, which they call it yacht rock, and that because it's that songwriting and those lush productions and vocal arrangements and those melodies are just timeless, and that's still that's still moves me to this day. But it's kind of, and now it's kind of smooth jazz. But it used to be just top 40.
Who would have thought, huh?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you look at what is top 40 now,
that can be a very vivid question. I mean, that can go a lot of different directions. Yeah.
Yeah, what is top 40? It's very different than when Casey Kasem was announcing the top 40 list on Sunday night. It was very different today.
That's for sure.
Yeah, there's that smooth, that smooth production is what kind of, I don't know, got my attention.
Yeah, and I guess it's kind of a comfortable lane that you're able to, I guess you could say, explore regularly, because especially I feel like with jazz, there's so many twists and turns. You can do so much with it. You really can. I didn't have much of appreciation for jazz, shamefully, I should say, until one of my exes, and he's actually a jazz musician. He's worked with major artists as well, but he's so talented, and all he ever listened to was jazz. I was like, oh my God, can we please get a break? But then he was like, no, you don't actually start explaining it to me, and I was like, wow, I feel so stupid now.
Well, there are studies of, IQ levels and jazz musicians, and it is notably they are much higher. They're just, because your brain, to be able to process the amount of math that's happening in real time is mind-boggling. So it really does expand your brain cells, to be able to appreciate jazz. No, but I study jazz and I love jazz, and that's, I see myself playing at the steakhouse someday, 20 years from now playing jazz standards, and, I would love that, to be honest. But right now it's, the stuff I'm recording and producing is smooth jazz, which is very different from bebop and quote unquote real jazz. The best smooth jazz players are capable of bebop and real jazz, but they kind of, I'm going to get in trouble by saying they water it down, or I don't want to say dumb it down, which I almost said dumb it down, but I don't want to say that. But they just make it more accessible to a broader audience that can appreciate, kind of this similar structure to pop songs, but without the vocal. There's verse, bridge, chorus, B section, that kind of thing, as told through a saxophone or a piano or a guitar instead of a vocal. And that's kind of what smooth jazz is.
Yeah, which I've grown to actually really enjoy.
Yeah,
I have actually. It's very relaxing, but if you really stop to listen to everything that's going on, it's pretty mind blowing. I sit there sometimes and I'm like Like, I'm not even going to try to figure it out because it's so much going on. But I also know that I think you have an album that's going to be released soon. If I'm not mistaken, it's titled Unperfect. What inspired this? And can we expect a little bit of that jazz infusion in it, or like what's it all about?
Lots of jazz infusion. Actually, one of my singles came out today. It's called Love is a Verb. That came out today. And the only other single that's been released is Hypnotic, which was the first instrumental single from the Unperfect album. And Hypnotic's done really well in the smooth jazz charts. It's been in the top 100 albums, which is really a lot because it's only a single, and it's competing with, Boney James and David Sanborn and Brian Culbertson and all those, huge, highly accomplished players. Their albums are competing with just my one song, and I've still been in the top 100 for, a couple months now. So that's been really well received. But there's 3 instrumentals and 7 vocal tracks. And I'll be releasing about every month or two another song until the whole album comes out in January. I just didn't want a 2020 stamp on it. I
hear you on that.
I met with the distributors and I don't want anything 2020 associated. Like, let's release singles throughout the year, but then the full album releases right away, January 2021, when the nightmare ends and world returns a little bit to...
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, right.
To normalcy, or whatever normalcy is going to look like going forward. God.
The new normal. New normal.
Yeah, sure. I'll call it that. At this point, it's like it changes every day, so I don't even know at what point do you stop calling something new? Every day something else rolls on. I'm like, what is this? 2021, please help. I wasn't saying that when it was New Year's last year, though. I was like, yes, it's 2020. And then it came here and I was like, no. I don't even want to rewind. I'm like, let's just fast forward. just be done with it altogether.
What's different about this, though, than every other year is this is pretty universal. Like, I'm having a bad year, but so are you, and so is everyone, unless you're Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates. Everyone else is having a horrible year.
Yeah, it's one for the books. I guess that's one way to put it. One for the books over it. But at least on a positive note, going back to Love is a Verb, which I'm super excited about for you, what was the creative process like on it?
Pretty similar to every song I've ever written, which is just picking up the guitar or the piano. In this case, it was piano. And you get a different song depending on which instrument you kind of start out on in the writing. But this one was piano, and I was just playing around. And it's one of those things where every day I'll just let my fingers kind of go. Mm-hmm. And if they land on something, then I kind of go, oh, well, then I kind of try and take myself out of it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'm intentional. All right, let me write a song. But a lot of times I'm just like, let me just check out and let my gifts and my spirit, whatever's in me, just write the song for me. And I would say 90% of the time that does not work. But then I'll only give it like 2 minutes. And if nothing comes out, I'm like, okay, that was fun. And I'll go work on some jazz scales or whatever. But then, 10% of the time, it's like, whoa, my fingers just wrote a song. Thanks. and then I'll open my mouth and just start singing. And that's part 2 to the equation. And it's a similar formula. And
it's almost like a freestyle session, huh? When you record.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
I encourage people to try this. But when on the vocal part of it, flip those odds. There's about a 90% chance that whatever comes out of my mouth will work. Will end up sticking. I don't know why that's flipped, but it just always is. And I'm talking lyrics too. Like whatever comes out of my head, usually it's like, oh, that's the song. That's what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
Like, then I got to go back and spend time and like, okay, what do I want to say? But the initial kind of, exploration process is just see what happens. And that's what happened on this song is just started going, and it just kind of wrote itself at first. But then there's the production element to it. And then once you start recording, I didn't have a bridge. I didn't have that B section. I didn't have the ending, but I started recording anyway. And then as you start hearing all the different, like you called them, the different colors and the different layers, then it takes on a life of its own. And now the bridge is clearly this or that.
Mm-hmm. It's like going on a little journey, like taking a little trip.
Totally.
And then you get to your destination, you're like, all right, where are we traveling to next?
Well, yeah, right. It was kind of like a birth. I don't have any children, so these are my children. You birth your child. The difference is I'm extremely neglectful of my children once they're birthed.
Well, then you just watch them grow on the charts.
Yeah, okay. All right, yeah, you're right. I watch them grow on the charts, but I don't do anything. I don't send them any money.
Well, the best part is they pay you. How about that?
They pay me.
How your creative process plays such a big role in what you do, and the fact that you don't overthink it and you just play off of a feeling in the moment, which is, I've always thought that that's like where the real magic happens. That's just my opinion, though. I mean, I don't know everything, but whenever I've heard things, that's what always ends up standing out the most, especially when you sit in these like jam sessions, like you were saying, especially with jazz musicians. It's like, it's a whole different universe. So knowing that you're so well versed in music and the thought that you put into your projects, are there any hidden gems in this album that we should be looking out for?
I think the title track is my most honest song. It's my, what is it? Magnus opus? I gotta go look that up. I'm probably mispronouncing that. But it's the one. It's that one that represents who I am as an artist the most. It's extremely vulnerable. I was very sad when I recorded and wrote that song, and it was in one take. And I did it actually several years ago. I just never released it. That song. All the rest of them were kind of more recent writing and producing, but that one I wrote a long time ago, and I just popped it on and listened to it as I was putting this album together. I listened to some old songs that I did a long time ago, and I went, I'm never going to be that sad, or let's hope I'm never going to be that sad again. Mm-hmm. And I'm never going to recreate that vocal. The vocal was technically not done optimally, mm-hmm. Meaning like you literally hear the dog in the background. Like, I wasn't recording it for keeps. I was just kind of getting the idea down. It was just so, I listened to it, when I was doing this album, and I went, oh, that vocal is not perfect. It's, but the song's called Unperfect.
But isn't that the beauty in it, though? Because Christina Aguilera had a song like that, too. And she was crying, and I heard her talking about, I think she was doing an interview. And was it Sia that had written it or something? I forget who it was. But anyway, long story short, what she was saying was that there's so much beauty in imperfection, and that being a true artist to yourself isn't always about being technically perfect, but being emotionally perfect when you deliver. And there's so much, I guess there's so, what's the best way to say it? But there's just so much meaning and so much power in being able to just be vulnerable in that way. Yeah. Because when you're technically perfect, you don't deal with any of that stuff. No. Auto-tune takes care of all the imperfections and all the soul. Yeah, and I love music like that, though, because I just think that it hits so much different. So I can't wait for 2021 so your album can come out, because I'm really excited to see kind of what your play on life is in a way through music, which
well,
is super
we're
cool.
friends now, so.
Oh, trust me, I'll be calling you. I'll be like, hey.
Well, I'm saying I can get you an advanced copy, you know.
Okay.
I'm good like that. I know. I mean, just let me know you want to hear. I'll send you
well,
Unperfect.
today?
When we hang up, I'll send you Unperfect. You can hear.
Oh, I can't wait.
I was.
But that's, you know what, though? I always claim that about myself. I always say I'm the furthest thing from perfection, but I am in my happiest moment of my life because I'm so comfortable with who I become. So
Right.
That's part of being human, though. Nobody is perfect. Like, I'm like, whatever. That's so overrated. Like, who came up with that? And what is perfection anyway? It's perspective. Like, everybody you ask has a different opinion on what perfect looks like. So I'm like, I'm so over. I'm like, just be you. Just be you and be excited to live in that. Yeah, exactly.
But isn't even the name is incorrect and imperfect.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there's just so much, there's layers of what? It's unperfect. No, it's supposed to be imperfect. No, that's why I called it unperfect, because even the title is wrong.
See, but that's the beauty. And I knew you were going to have some hidden gems somewhere in there. There's going to be some sort of a story to what's going on.
Well, unperfect isn't a word. Imperfect is the word.
Mm-hmm.
And so calling it unperfect just adds to the, I don't know, what do you call that? What is that called?
I was going to say hyperbole, but I'm going real far left here. No, but basically it's like you're really solidifying your statement in a very forward, kind of melodramatic way, because it's so in your face that it almost goes unnoticed, but it's so obvious at the same time.
Exactly. I love that when most people aren't going to catch it and it will go unnoticed. But the ones that do, it's like kind of, I get it.
Yeah, I see what you did there.
I see what you did. Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Is there another song on this album that's called Colors?
Yes.
I think that's written by, she wrote it with you, right? Prince's sister?
Prince's sister. And
Sharon Nelson?
Sharon Nelson.
Okay. That's going to be a good one, too.
Oh, it's great. That was so inspired. That is one where she told me that Prince got melodies in his sleep, and that's where he got all those hit songs that we all know and love, and at such a rapid pace that he was able to pen them and then produce them and get them out. And she said he got them in his sleep, melodies. And she said that a lot of times her father, who originally started getting the melodies and then kind of nurtured Prince into channeling this source, she called it Source, and she said that since her father passed away, Prince's father passed away, and then Prince passed away, that she started receiving melodies in her sleep the same way. Wow. And so she wanted me to produce and record and, and do me around these melodies that she got in her sleep. So she invited me to her house. She came to a show, and I found out she was tweeting really nice things about me. And I didn't even know she was a fan because I'm not on Twitter. I got to get on Twitter. But anyway, people told me, Prince's sister is like really saying nice things about you. I'm like, oh, okay. So I reached out to her, invited her to a show in Minneapolis. She came out, and then she invited me over, and then she played a melody on the piano. And it was just 8 notes. She just played 8 notes. And she said, you do whatever you want, but do not alter that melody, because it didn't even come from me. It came from Source. Don't question it. And I was questioning. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with those 8 notes? And she said, harmonize them. Go ahead, play it. And she just, in front of her, she wanted me to construct, a chord progression. So I did. Apparently I passed the test. And then she said, she gave me full freedom and full autonomy to, she was a fan of my original and what I do, and she just go do it, but just use that melody.
That was the only stipulation.
That was the only stipulation. Yeah, she said you can play with verses and bridges and lyrics and production, and do not alter that. that melody in exactly the way she played it. I'm like, okay, I'll take the challenge. And that's what it is. That's Colors.
So how would you... Go ahead.
Oh, it was like the next day. Like I was just, at first I'm like, there's nothing, like what am I supposed to do with those notes? This is just so unorthodox. And the notes didn't make sense because they pushed time. They weren't in 4/4 time. They weren't in 3/4 time. They were in, I don't even know what time. Your listeners, when they get to hear that song, somebody tell me what time it's in. Because technically it's in 4/4 time, but you're going to hear just the way it's pushed, and it doesn't really make sense. And so I was struggling with that. But she just said, there's nothing to struggle. Don't question it. Just go. And so I tried to just keep that in the back of my mind as I went home and tried to work with it. And it just came out immediately. Immediately, the song was done. And I sent it to her the next day, the demoed version. Yeah.
And what'd she say?
Loved it. I mean, she wasn't really, you can imagine she's Prince's sister, right? So there's a lot of similarities where it's not like she was overly praising me or anything like that. That wasn't the case. It was more like she fully expected excellence. So she wasn't surprised. She expected it. And she's like, yeah, it's great. Let's go. It was kind of like that.
Done. Yeah, like, oh, how's the weather? Okay, great. Next. What are we doing next?
But
okay.
Considering who her brother was, you got to take that into account.
It makes perfect sense, honestly. How would you describe your relationship with music at this point?
Whoa, with music. We get along pretty good. We've been going steady for a long time. Neither of us gets jealous. My relationship with music is, it's pure. It's give and take, I guess. There's a lot of sacrifice that goes into being a musician. Tons and tons of sacrifice. And to excel at your craft, you are studying every day. I don't care who you are. Chick Corea studies every day. So I will be studying every day. And so there's commitment in that respect. But the payoff is enormous. It's more than I put in. The payoff gives me more than I put in. So those are always the good relationships, right? When you put in less than you get back.
Yeah, that only happens with music, because in real life,
right.
I'm like,
you're right.
Where?
You're right. That only happens with music.
If you could go back and relive any moment in your life, which one would it be and why?
Oh, this is deep. You are going deep, Abbie.
Oh, yeah. We're going there.
If I could relive any moment in my life, like just a one moment
just
or
one
a time
moment.
period? Or...
Just like that song, One Moment in Time.
Hey! Now scat it.
Oh, nah.
Okay.
I'm like, I don't even know where I'd go.
What? Okay. If I was to get a do-over, that kind of a thing?
Yeah, or if there was just one moment that was just super special that you just wish you could go back in time and just relive it because it was that amazing.
Oh, I took it the other way. Like a regret where that one thing happened. I wish I wouldn't have done it.
Oh, yeah, no. But, let's keep it on the positive.
No, you don't want to. Let's keep it positive. Okay, one thing that happened that was awesome that I wanted to relive.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that happened in the realm of music, right?
It could be anything, really. Something that's special to you.
Something that's special to me that I want to relive. Well, since I'm drawing a blank, I'm going to say when I got the call to play keyboards for the Atlanta Rhythm section, which, like I told you, that's one of my all-time favorite bands, and one of my biggest influences is the Atlanta Rhythm section. So I got the call. Dr. Fink and myself met them when we did the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which happened before we formed Purple Experience. And it's really the reason we decided to form Purple Experience. But But anyway, we met, and we were hanging out with Cheap Trick and Atlanta Rhythm Section, and Dave Mason and Black Crowes were there, and members of Yes, what's his name? Alan White from Yes, and members of Queen. And we were just jamming with these. We got to know them and hang out with them, and we played with them. And I just became really good friends with Dave Anderson from Atlanta Rhythm Section. And we just stayed in touch. He comes to my shows. I go to his shows. And his keyboard player, who's the founder of the Atlanta Rhythm Section, had an accident. And they had a show the next day. And he broke his ribs. And he called me and said, can you come play keyboards for us? We have a big gig, and we need you we need somebody. I'm like, well, my schedule's open. Like, I could be there, but I don't know your songs. Like, I listen to them, but I've never played them. Like, I'd have to chart out. Like, how many songs? Like, I was like 23. Like,
oh my God.
24 hours, like the Atlanta Rhythm Section. So I just said yes. And I'm so glad that I said yes, because I shouldn't have. It didn't make any sense. How am I gonna in 24 hours learn all these songs? It just doesn't make any sense. But I just said yes. And then once I said yes, you know how that is. Okay, well, now I have to go learn 23 songs. So I just said yes. He's like, great, you're booking your flights, and it's going to be great. And
you were like sweating bullets, like, no pressure, guys. I got this.
What did I say yes to? So then I downloaded, every Greatest Hits album and got all their songs. And there was so many songs that I'd never ever heard, that they did in concert. Of course, I knew the big ones, the hits, never played them. And I had to learn, arrangements and you had to split keyboard parts. There's Rhodes piano, there's strings, there's piano, there's solos. And I just stayed up all night. And then on the plane ride there, I got my little tiny Akai 1-octave toy piano that I had on the plane, and my earbuds. Didn't sleep. And then on the flight, I'm learning their songs. Got to the gig, nervous as heck. Sound check, just play with these guys. I was like pinching myself, like, wow. And then show, I've never had a better time. I mean, it was, so we talked earlier, way back when, in the beginning of this conversation, we talked about being a sideman. Mm-hmm. You asked about being a musician versus being an artist. I wasn't an artist. I was a musician for the Atlanta frickin' Rhythm Section. And I was just a sideman. And they gave me a vocal mic, and I'm like, like, they didn't need me to sing. So I'm like, no, I'm not even going to sing. I'm just going to play. I'm just going to be in the back. I wasn't in the front. I'm so used to, I'm the front man. I'm singing. I was just in the back, holding down these iconic keyboard parts for the Atlanta Rhythm Section. So that was a highlight of my career. I should have named that when you asked me what was one of my highlights. That's definitely up there.
You definitely nailed that. Now we know. And we got to kind of relive the memory with you, which is super cool as well. That's part of what makes life so amazing. What advice would you give to yourself in the future?
What advice would I give to myself in the future?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't it go the other way around? Like, what would I tell my old self?
No, because if
what
you
do
think
I tell
of
my future self?
Yeah, what would you tell your future self? Because the way that the world is moving, there's so much going on. Like, if it was me, I would probably tell my future self to stay really grounded and really humbled, because the world is moving at a very accelerated rate into a lot of unknown things. And so I would probably want to cling to what's been the most profound part of my life that's helped kind of keep me who I am, like, leveled. So that would be my take on myself.
I would say, which I try and tell myself presently, and, future being one day at a time kind of a thing, is, you got to do that thing where you appreciate things. You have to take inventory and go, you see the memes on social media and you go, there's complain about your house and I'll show you a homeless person. Complain about your shoes and I'll show you a guy who doesn't have shoes. Complain about your job and I'll show you an unemployed guy. That kind of thing. You go down the list, and anytime you complain about something, guaranteed somebody's praying for that thing that you're complaining about, whatever it is.
Yeah, I always say be thankful for what you have, not what you don't have. So appreciate the things you do have in your life, because there's such a big difference between the two. Like it's always nice to strive for more, but also be content with the blessings that you currently have. Because people are going through so much more as well, which actually, since we're kind of on the topic of being good to yourself and staying forthcoming and taking care of, which I think taking care of yourself is super important, at least when you're talking about, getting into your later years and all the complications that come with that, which every time I think about time, I'm like, it goes by so fast. I'm not ready for it. But what would be your take on self-love?
Self-love?
Mm-hmm. As far as taking care of yourself, some people wasn't trying to go left with that, but a lot of times, have you ever talked to someone and you're like, all you do is work around the clock? What do you do for yourself? What time do you take to really give love back to yourself, as far as making sure that you're okay or that you're happy?
Gosh, I'm so, it's that love that I display with my music and daily, practice and exploration on the piano. And that is where I'm at peace. It's my yoga. I study with a master, jazz instructor, and he says that, and so now I do it, but the first thing he does in the morning is he plays, and the last thing he does before he goes to bed is he plays. And he said that's when he's most grounded and most at peace and most comfortable in his own skin, is the morning and the night. So what a way to live is.
That's beautiful.
To be grounded in the morning and grounded at night. And he said it's yoga. So he approaches the piano with all the same yoga philosophies.
It's like a mental and emotional yoga versus the physical. There's some physical too. There's physical too, because it true north. So that deals with your posture, and then he calls them quiet hands. So when his hands are moving around and they're doing things that are just, she would just always say it is what it is. And at some point, you accept the things you cannot change, right? And then you just go, it is what it is. And I try and apply that without a negative connotation to it, because it can be negative. Well, that sucks, but it is what it is. And I kind of just go, hey, it is what it is for now. And there's seasons. I'm all about seasons. And there's sowing season, there's harvest, and there's drought, and there's all kinds of, wherever you are, and whatever it is, doesn't last forever. That's why it's called a season. So right now, this season, I think we're all kindred spirits here on this particular season we're in. Yeah. But it is what it is, and it's not gonna last forever. And then the next season, just can't wait for the next season. This is winter in August. I don't even know what season we're in anymore in real life. But that's a really awesome, simplified way of looking at life through a positive lens, just kind of keeping things on the up and up constantly. I always say it's so good to have a glass half full mentality all the time.
Yeah.
Because you just never know what tomorrow brings. So you just got to be thankful for all the moments, the little ones, the big ones, just all of it.
It's hard to do sometimes.
Yeah.
But
it's part of the journey, part of the story. And I always say, you are the author of your own book. So you choose to make your story whatever it becomes, whether it's positive or negative. It's on you. Like they say, your fate is in your own hands. So you gotta make a choice for yourself. What do you really want for yourself? Nobody gets up and is like, oh man, I just hope I have the worst day today. So
right.
I always say it's perspective, but I really appreciate you taking the time to share your story and some of your memories and your knowledge on music and sharing a little bit about Prince. Not too many people have stories that they're fortunate enough to be able to share with the rest of us, and so we kind of get to live a little piece of your life in the music business through you, and that was really awesome. So I really appreciate that.
It was just like talking with an old friend, so I appreciate it too.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll make sure that we reconnect when your album comes out so that you can give us the full scoop on all the hidden messages that you've gotten there, because I know there's more than one, for sure.
Anytime.
Yeah, it'll be like the journey through your brain, which has got to be like going through the Matrix.
You're going to be my agent. You know that.
Yeah, I'll be like, you can sign all your checks too.
Right.
Right here on the dotted line. Yeah. You just.
That's where you want my autograph, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right there. Just make sure there's a couple commas. Yeah, let's make sure we've got the numbers sorted out properly. So, but thank you again. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much. And, we'll be in touch, and I can't wait to hear that song. Unperfect sounds like it's going to be quite a ride to listen to, and so I'm super excited. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Abbie.
You're welcome.
My pleasure.
So we'll talk soon. I can't wait.
Me too.
All right. Thank you so much, Marshall.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Chill, so zen, so pleasant to talk to, and what a collection of memories. How many of us wouldn't give a lot to be able to sit there front row and just hang out and listen to Prince jam out? It's like a personal concert with an audience of one. Like, what? Where does stuff like this happen? Apparently it happens to Marshall. So it's possible. It really is possible. But I appreciate him so much for taking the time to come on the show today and talk a little bit about his journey. It's been super interesting. As you can see, he's a very seasoned musician and performer, and it's just I always feel like it's cool to be able to just relive those experiences through other people of what their life has been like, because life can be such a crazy roller coaster ride, and it's full of so many twists and unexpected turns. It's just like you never know where you're going to end up. So that was super cool. If you guys want to check him out, you can go to his Instagram at Marshall Charloff. He also has quite a bit of music on iTunes if you want to check him out as well. Same name. You'll find all sorts of good stuff, including Love is a Verb. So make sure you guys check that out.